The Gospel of Mary Magdalene. The Gospel of Mary, attributed to Mary Magdalene, was discovered in the late 19th century and is considered part of the Gnostic tradition. The text portrays Mary Magdalene as having special knowledge that the other disciples lack, even suggesting that Jesus shared teachings with her that he did not reveal to the others. This has led to speculation that she held a more significant role in early Christianity than traditionally believed, possibly as a leader or spiritual authority among Jesus' followers. The Gospel also presents a different perspective on salvation, focusing on inner knowledge and spiritual enlightenment, rather than faith in Jesus' death and resurrection. However, the manuscript is incomplete, with large portions missing, making it difficult to fully understand its message or reconstruct its original teachings. Some scholars believe that the missing sections could have contained key theological insights or narratives that would provide a clearer picture of its purpose. The early church likely rejected it because of its Gnostic elements, which emphasize secret knowledge as the path to salvation rather than grace or faith. Additionally, the idea that Mary Magdalene had unique spiritual insight contradicted the authority of male disciples like Peter, which may have been seen as a challenge to the church's developing hierarchy. The text also presents a conflict between Mary and the male disciples, particularly Peter, reflecting broader tensions over the role of women in early Christian leadership. The Gospel of Thomas. Unlike the canonical Gospels, which tell the story of Jesus' life, the Gospel of Thomas consists of 114 sayings attributed to Jesus. Some of these sayings closely resemble those in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, while others are more cryptic and philosophical. It does not contain a narrative structure, miracles, or the Passion story, which made it distinct from the traditional Gospels. Many scholars believe it was written in the 2nd century and influenced by Gnostic ideas. The early church likely rejected it due to its emphasis on secret knowledge and lack of alignment with the traditional Christian message of salvation. The Gospel of Peter. The Gospel of Peter is one of the most fascinating and controversial apocryphal texts. It provides an alternate account of Jesus' trial, crucifixion, and resurrection with dramatic embellishments. Notably, it claims that Jesus felt no pain on the cross and that his resurrection was witnessed by celestial beings, including a walking, talking cross. This gospel was condemned by early church leaders like Serapion of Antioch, who initially permitted its use but later rejected it after realizing its content aligned with heretical views. The exaggerated supernatural elements likely contributed to its exclusion from the New Testament. The Gospel of Nicodemus, Acts of Pilate. Also known as the Acts of Pilate, this gospel expands on the trial of Jesus before Pontius Pilate, providing additional details not found in the canonical Gospels. It portrays Pilate in a more sympathetic light, sometimes even suggesting that he recognized Jesus' innocence, but was pressured into condemning him. One of the most significant aspects of this text is its vivid account of Christ's descent into hell, a theme that later became an important part of Christian theology. According to the Gospel, Jesus enters the realm of the dead and liberates the righteous souls who had been waiting for salvation, including figures from the Old Testament such as Adam, Eve, and the patriarchs. This concept, known as the harrowing of hell, influenced early Christian teachings and creeds, particularly in traditions that emphasize Christ's victory over death and the underworld. While some parts of the text align with early Christian beliefs, its dramatic embellishments and legendary elements set it apart from the canonical Gospels. Additionally, the Gospel is believed to have been written centuries after the events it describes, which raised concerns about its historical reliability. Scholars generally agree that it was composed in the later centuries of Christian history, likely as a way to reinforce theological ideas rather than provide a factual account of Jesus' life. Due to its late composition and the inclusion of mythical elements, the early church ultimately rejected it from the biblical canon. However, its influence can still be seen in later Christian traditions, particularly in artistic depictions and theological discussions about Christ's role in redeeming humanity. The Infancy Gospel of Thomas. While the Gospel of Thomas records Jesus' sayings, the Infancy Gospel of Thomas focuses on Jesus' childhood, a topic the canonical Gospels largely omit. This Gospel portrays a young Jesus performing miracles, but also displaying uncontrollable power, even striking people dead when angered. The text likely aimed to satisfy curiosity about Jesus' early years, but conflicted with the image of a compassionate and sinless Messiah. The church rejected it due to its dubious theology and portrayal of Jesus as a supernatural child with frightening abilities. The Gospel of Judas. The Gospel of Judas is the single most controversial gospel to have been discovered. The text was likely written in the 4th century and was then lost until the 20th century. Unlike other gospels named after Jesus' followers, this one is named after Judas, the disciple who betrayed him. In the New Testament, Judas is portrayed as the ultimate traitor, selling out Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. However, this gospel presents a drastically different narrative. Initially, its translation depicted Jesus in a dark and menacing way while portraying Judas as a hero. The text suggests that Jesus orchestrated his own betrayal, making Judas an essential figure in his divine plan. This alternate depiction challenged traditional Christian teachings, making it one of the most debated Gospels. The Gospel of Philip. Like the four Gospels in the Bible, the Gospel of Philip claims to have been authored by one of Jesus' followers. Where it differs is in its style and content. Most Gospels focus on the narrative of Jesus' life, but this one is more like a sermon or treatise. Many of the concepts and Christian rituals raised in the book are familiar, such as baptism, but the author refers to them as allegories rather than actual rituals. All in all, this is one of the most complex and difficult to understand Gospels on this list. This book was likely rejected for several reasons. The first is that its philosophy is very different from what other Christians were used to. Parts of it don't even sound like Christianity, but rather other religions from the ancient world, like Manichaeism. Fortunately for the curious, most of the text remains intact and accessible. The Gospel of the Hebrews. This gospel is one of the lost texts of early Christianity, known only through fragments quoted by early church fathers like Clement of Alexandria and Jerome. It was reportedly used by Jewish Christian communities and written in Hebrew or Aramaic. Unlike the canonical Gospels, the Gospel of the Hebrews emphasized Jewish traditions and may have portrayed Jesus in a way that aligned more closely with Jewish beliefs. The early church likely rejected it because it was not widely circulated and contained theological perspectives that deviated from emerging Christian orthodoxy. The Gospel of the Ebionites. The Ebionites were a Jewish Christian sect that strictly adhered to Jewish law and rejected the teachings of the Apostle Paul, whom they viewed as distorting Jesus' message. Their gospel, known as the Gospel of the Ebionites, has not survived in full and is only known through fragments quoted by early church fathers. This text portrays Jesus as a purely human figure, rejecting the virgin birth and presenting him as a prophet rather than the divine Son of God. Unlike the canonical Gospels, it omits key elements such as the crucifixion narrative, which is central to Christian theology. The Ebionites believed that following the Jewish law was essential for salvation, a view that put them at odds with the broader Christian movement. Because their teachings contradicted foundational Christian doctrines, including Jesus' divinity and the role of his death and resurrection, the early church declared them heretical. Over time, as Christianity became more distinct from Judaism, the Ebionites lost influence and eventually disappeared. Despite their decline, their gospel offers a glimpse into the diversity of early Christian thought and the debates over Jesus' identity. The Gospel of Truth. Discovered among the Nag Hammadi texts, the Gospel of Truth is not a gospel in the traditional sense, as it lacks a narrative structure about Jesus' life. Instead, it is a poetic and philosophical reflection on truth, knowledge, and the nature of salvation. Written in the 2nd century, it is heavily influenced by Gnostic thought, emphasizing the idea that salvation comes through knowledge, gnosis, rather than faith in Christ's atoning sacrifice. The Church rejected it because of its Gnostic elements, which contradicted mainstream Christian teachings about sin, redemption, and Jesus' role in salvation. If you liked this video, you won't want to miss our next one. Top 10 Darkest Moments in Religious History. Throughout history, religion has inspired great acts of faith and compassion, but it has also been at the center of some of humanity's most tragic and unsettling events. From deadly inquisitions to brutal persecutions, we'll explore the moments that cast long shadows over religious history. What really happened during these dark times, and how did they shape the world we live in today? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss it.